A Day Out with Thomas event in 2020? Yep, it happened. Hey everybody, and welcome to this unique video on my 2020 Day Out with Thomas experience. When the year began, I wasn't planning on doing another Day Out with Thomas video at the Colorado Railroad Museum because most everything stays the same from year to year and very few things are added or removed. However, this year was definitely an exception. For starters, yes, I did attend a Day Out with Thomas event during the pandemic. And honestly, I'm just as surprised as you. For months, I expected this event at the Colorado Railroad Museum to be canceled, much like every other Day Out with Thomas event in the United States that was scheduled after March. But to my surprise, when September rolled around, there was Thomas pulling the coaches and chugging around the train yard just like every other year. So what exactly made this Day Out with Thomas event different from years past? Well, let me show you. Like a lot of public places in the United States since the pandemic began, masks were required for guests ages 3 and up. No ifs, ands, or buts. Capacity was severely limited compared to previous years. And I don't have any exact figures, but I think you'll get a good representation of the crowd size based on how many people you see in the background of my footage. Considering they used to cram as many people as possible onto the coaches for the train ride with Thomas, it was a nice change to get plenty of space by myself for this year's ride-along. From what I could tell, guests were spaced out appropriately in all major areas on the event grounds. Cleaning and sanitizing were, of course, a top priority. All of the cars were cleaned after each train ride, and food tables were sanitized after each use. Probably the biggest area that was hit the hardest by these new restrictions was the third-party offerings, i.e. local companies or activities not sponsored by Mattel. In the past, there was a petting zoo, an area for temporary tattoos and face paint, and even a play area for the little ones to occupy their time. But this year, all of that was removed. Some areas remained, like the hay bale maze, and even a new display by the Denver LEGO Users Group, or DENLUG, but most of those usual hands-on activities were long gone. In terms of what Fisher-Price and Mattel brought to the party, well, it was more than I was expecting. I was anticipating a bare-bones event with just a train ride and maybe a gift shop, but the Day Out with Thomas excitement was still there, it was just being presented a little bit differently. Sir Topham Hatt was still around to meet with young train fans, albeit there were some obstacles in the way to prevent you from getting too close. Story time and sing-along sessions were still present, but again, with social distancing measures in effect. The biggest downfall with Day Out with Thomas events in recent years has been the gift shop. Long gone are the days of a trade show-like tent where the newest and biggest Thomas toys are proudly displayed and lined up for the potential sale. This year, with COVID restrictions in effect, the merchandise available was pretty pitiful, and I don't blame Mattel for this one. I imagine the logistics of getting new merchandise out of China right now into retail stores is hectic enough, let alone setting stuff aside for a Dinky Thomas event in Colorado. There was an emphasis for guests to buy merchandise before or after the event to reduce human interaction, but it was still pretty sad to see one of the best parts of this event fall even further. Overall though, Day Out with Thomas 2020 was no bust. It was just different, and this won't be the only public event that has to make changes to our new world. I was very impressed with how the Colorado Railroad Museum handled the new changes, and I believe they did a fantastic job of keeping the Thomas magic alive for the guests in attendance. The employees were very helpful, knowledgeable, and eager to make the day as fun as they could. Considering the major changes that Day Out with Thomas faced this year, as well as the major changes that the Thomas & Friends TV show is facing next year, my 2019 Day Out with Thomas video may have been the last normal event as we know it. Who knows if Day Out with Thomas events will be around in the future with everything that's going on. Regardless, even though the odds were against them, the Colorado Railroad Museum and Mattel somehow pulled this off, and as far as I know, there were no COVID cases tied to this event. Honestly, if I was the one in charge of deciding whether or not to do an event like this in the middle of a global pandemic, I would have erred on the side of caution and said no. But I imagine local railroads rely on the traffic and publicity from these Day Out with Thomas events to drive interest and money to their organization. I wouldn't be surprised if this once-a-year event pays the bills for the majority of railroads across the United States, and therefore they really don't have a choice but to open up and do this event regardless of what's happening out there. There's much more I could say about this issue, but I think I'll leave it at that for now. Overall, Day Out with Thomas 20 was a lot of fun. It was just different, and I think that's the way things are going to be in the future. Anyway, thanks for watching, and feel free to leave any questions or comments you have below.